Good afternoon, everyone. I am Sunil Rajguru, editor of PCQuest and CIOL.com, and your host for today's live webinar. A warm welcome to you all, and thank you for joining us for our discussion today around Derive Value with Intelligent Data. There will be a Q&A session at the end, so you can start sharing your questions from now itself on the Q&A button below the screen. So let us begin the proceedings. So the topic I have chosen today to set the mood for the webinar is that we are entering an era of rapid digitization. I mean, the scale of digitization was happening at a certain rate, and post-COVID, it has become rapid. And we are on an irreversible path towards digitization, right? So if you, first of all, so I'll just introduce myself. I'm Sunil Rajguru. I'm editor of PCQuest and CIOL.com, and you can get in touch with me for anything you might require. Now, it was Charles Darwin who said that it is not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent that survives. It is the one that is most adaptable to change. I think this is very timely in the COVID era, because such a tremendous change is happening and we cannot reverse the change. The change will happen and we will go forward, and we have to adapt. And speaking in the IT industry or even in the non-IT industry, you have to adopt your technology. You have to adopt technology and move ahead. Sorry. So like, what do I mean by saying that there is a rapid digitization? You see, what happens is there are many aspects to this. Now, if you look at the olden days in the 80s, data would be collected on paper, and that paper data would be then digitized. And that is why the quality of data was very bad. Sometimes you had structured, unstructured data, sometimes the copying was wrong, and sometimes it was just plain incorrect. But now what is happening is that data is being collected digitally from source. You know, wherever, whether it's on your computer, whether it's on your mobile. I mean, probably the biggest example is the mobile. Now, in the olden days, when you had to fill in a form for your new internet connection, for your new phone connection, for even something like an insurance, you know, you would fill in digitize. But now the mobile agent comes with his mobile and you feed directly. So everything is being done digital first. It is not analog to digital conversion. All our data is being collected digitally. Even the WFH culture has taken off. So again, in an office, you would make notes, you might make, files. You can't do that. If all your employees are spread over all over, you cannot courier each other papers. So everything is being done at the digital level. So whether you look at the collection of data, whether you look at work from home, whether you look at mobile workforce or the collaboration, digital data, more and more digital data is being created and it is being converted. Everything is becoming digital. I mean, even you look at education. The universities had the greatest, paperwork, documents, books. But now online remote education is catching on. And that is also irreversible, because there are two things. One is cost and one is remote. If you can't afford, expensive education offline, you'll go for online. If you're in a remote area, then you'll be online. Again, the syllabus can be expanded, it can be updated online. Everything is being done online. Even training is being done by XR. When I say XR, I mean virtual reality, whatever, MR, AR, augmented reality. So even training is done. Then even no-touch technologies are taking off, like drones and connected cars. And 5G also will enable smart cities. The point I'm making is now, there will be no such thing as an office drawer or a office thing. We have millions of data centers all over, and we have billions of devices. So this data now has taken a life of its own. It has taken a new path. It is being created digitally, and it is traveling across millions of data centers across billions of devices. Right. So that is why, I mean, this is such a cliche. I mean, our publication is Dataquest. The name was given in 1982, Dataquest. But it's every decade data still rules, whether it's the 80s, 90s, 2000s. So even in this new age I'm talking about, data will continue. The data is exploding. We have a great appetite for data. It is increasing exponentially, right? We are having more and more data centers, cloud operations. And another thing, what you don't realize, if I say we have millions of data centers and billions of devices, there is another thing called the Internet of Things. So already there are more IoT devices than there are people. And by 2030, they could be 500 billion IoT devices. Now just think, 500 billion IoT devices are collecting data and transmitting. So first of all, human beings cannot handle this kind of data. So one is the data analytics will have to get better. It will get better. And second is we will not be able to manage, sift through and go through this data. It will be intelligent data, and AI will be the key when we look at that. That is why I say that 2020s is the decade of complete digital transformation. Now you have heard the term digital transformation. That means, okay, maybe one department will do it, one company will do it, but no. Now we are reaching a stage where everything has to be, digitally transformed. Now, even if you're in a kirana ka dukan, you're doing mobile payments, you're ordering things by your mobile, right? It doesn't matter in what, even if you're an SMB, forget, even if you're a small factory, you have to get on Industry 4.0 to avoid these lockdowns and all that. So I would say now it is complete digitization and complete digital transformation. So that's what I want to say, the importance of data, digitization, and digital transformation. So now I think we can move on to the webinar. So, first of all, we have many of our, two of our presenters. So one is Sudarshan A. He's the APAC solution lead for business critical applications and converged solution, Hitachi Vantara. So he has been the APAC lean working with, architect resilient, scalable, agile infrastructure workloads such as SAP, HANA, Oracle, and containers. He has been, with Hitachi Vantara spanning various roles. And he has worked with customers to spearhead their data center modernization efforts and the various digital transformation initiatives. Our second presenter is Nilesh Goradia. He's pre-sales leader, systems engineering partner, and SI in VMware. Now, Nilesh Goradia is currently working as a pre-sales leader for partner SI, state government, and central government in VMware India. He has deep technology expertise in areas of modern data center, hybrid cloud, and virtual cloud networks. Nilesh carries a vast industry experience of more than 2 decades working with organizations like Capgemini and Citrix. He has worked in various roles, leading teams in consulting, pre-sales, and technical support. He has worked across various verticals, including BFSI, ITAS, and government. Nilesh is a graduate from University of Mumbai and a postgraduate from Symbiosis Pune. So over to you, Nilesh. We'll get on to your presentation. Nilesh, you're on mute. Nilesh, you're on mute.
Yes. So thank you, Sunil, for the lovely introduction. And something which I really loved as a part of your introduction was millions of data center and billions of devices, right? And I would like to put it as saying that previously we were talking about data centers, and now we are actually talking about centers of data, right? So data being of that importance, and the application landscape as far as the enterprise is concerned is changing so fast. How can technology providers like VMware make a difference as far as the digital initiative of the enterprise is concerned? So I'll try to cover a few slides and talk about how do you build a secure, agile, robust infrastructure or a robust foundation for the digital business. So what we'll see is what is leading the digital, right? So if you ask me, everybody is talking about going digital, from organizations to even government entities and social organizations. everybody is talking about being digital. So if you see what is digital, there was a survey which was done by IDC. It says that over the next 5 years, enterprises will build around 500 million applications, and they will be using the cloud native tools and methods. So ideally, they will be built using modern tools and frameworks, using tools like Kubernetes, Dockers, containers, right? And this is what makes a modern application. So that is what has been predicted. I will add to that, saying that the amount of data which will be dealt, by organizations is going to grow humongously, and that will include structured data, that will include unstructured data, and so on. Right? Now, if you have to deal with this scenario, that one end you have the modern applications, and the other end you have huge amount of data, which actually needs to be stored somewhere, right? And that is where you talk about information centers. And information centers basically require a very, very robust infrastructure, right? And I use this term information center very responsibly, because your information center can be anything, right? It could be your legacy data center, it could be the cloud, or it could even be your edge, okay, where you have tons of information which is there. Now the crux is, how do you provide a robust framework, okay, which can actually host this information, right? And the second most important thing is, how do you secure that framework, because that is going to be more important. So what we have done as a technology partner, we've tried to basically help customers build a ubiquitous digital foundation, where we start with the application, and we say it can be any kind of an application, whether it is your traditional application, because while we talk about modern applications, we strongly believe that the traditional applications will still be there for a while, right? So you're not going to stop using them. It's not going to move out of your enterprise. So you will have traditional applications, then you'll build the modern applications, and then obviously there will be a lot of applications which will be provided as a service, right? And then you have those billions of devices, right, which want to host data, and you also want to extract the data which is there either in the traditional data center or information center or the cloud, and they want to extract data from them, right? So these billions of devices. And third is obviously, you would have information center, which is any kind of a data center or a cloud. Now, what we believe, and that is what we have worked on, that promise, okay, where we say that we'll be able to give you a consistent infrastructure across any kind of an information center which you can think of, whether it is your data center, whether it is your cloud, or even if you're talking of the edge, right? Your infrastructure doesn't change anything. The second promise is everything will be software defined, right? So we promise a software defined everything kind of an information center, which is driven by the software. And the third is, we'll provide you consistent operations, right, across whether it is your data center, cloud, or the edge. You have a single unified management platform which can help you to basically manage the entire information centers which you have, right? And also set a security framework, okay, across those information centers, and host any kind of applications which you can think of, whether it is a legacy monolithic application or a microservices based application, right? So that is what our promises, software defined everything. Now, before moving ahead, I would like to know from the audience in terms of what are their challenges, what they are trying to do. So can we have a poll question and just get an answer from the audience, please? Yeah, did we get the answers? Okay, so we've got the answers, right? And majority of you are saying that it's basically the application modernization led infrastructure change which is there, right? And that is what majority of the audience out there is. Now, if you have to do that, what we believe is there are three pillars, okay, which can actually make this possible. Number one is a robust infrastructure, okay, tried, tested, scalable, agile, secure, available on demand, right? And that is where partners like Hitachi come into picture to guarantee a robust infrastructure, whether in any area of your information center, right? The second is what you want is a always on network, right? In terms of the network has to be available because you want to access information, and you also want to connect those billions of devices where the information is stored, right? The third is ubiquitous access. So that means where you would basically want to access that information on those devices and from anywhere from your centers of data where the information needs to be accessed. And while you do this, okay, what is important is intrinsic security has to be built in across all of them, right? Because your security cannot be bolt on, it has to be built in. And as Sunil mentioned about intelligent data, what you would ideally want is lifecycle automation, which has to be built, which basically allows you to automate everything, right? And it has to support. So what VMware does is to make this vision a reality, right? Number one, we partner with the most modern and robust infrastructure providers like Hitachi. The second is what we provide is a software-defined everything foundation platform, and that is what we call it as a VMware Cloud Foundation. VMware Cloud Foundation is combination of the software-defined compute, which is our vSphere, which is the number one hypervisor, and we can ideally virtualize everything. Now we have gone one step ahead and added the modern application framework as a part of the vSphere platform itself, right? So you can have a single platform which can run your virtual machines and which can also run your modern applications all on the same platform itself. The second part is, the software-defined network. So we believe that, everything has to be software-defined. So your security, your network has to be as close as possible as far as your applications are concerned, right? And that is where our software-defined network, which is NSXT, comes into perspective. The third is, the software-defined storage, and we've emphasized enough in terms of the importance of data and how important it is to be secure and always available as far as your data is concerned. And that is where the vSAN or the software-defined storage comes into perspective. And the last piece is, the automation lifecycle, right? In terms of you want to automate, you want to manage workloads across any cloud, and that is what we realize brings to the table. And what we say is the intrinsic security is built in, okay, across whatever framework which we are talking about, whether it is compute, whether it is network, or whether it is storage. Everything is secure by design, right? Rather than having a bolt-on security. And we give a platform where the DevOps can be brought together, where the developer says that it works on my machine, but somehow when I put it on production, it doesn't work. So you want to do that. Basically, you have a framework which gives you a DevOps framework for your modern applications, and on the same platform, you have your monolithic applications also running, so that you have a single platform where you can have every kind of your application not only being ported but also being available for the developers to access and run your applications directly onto that particular platform. So what we are doing is we are bringing the infrastructure and the developer together on a single platform itself, right? And that is what the promise is from the VMware Cloud Foundation. And you can run that VMware Cloud Foundation on any kind of a cloud. So I can run it in the private data center and maybe then run it on AWS, Google, Azure, and whatever, or Oracle, whatever hyperscalers you're thinking of. I can just lift and shift the entire cloud foundation from the data center to any cloud. And that actually gives me portability to run applications across any cloud without any kind of a downtime. Or I can have a hybrid scenario where I have the data center and the cloud foundation also runs, on any kind of a cloud, giving you a true hybrid or a multi-cloud scenario, right? So that's our answer, where we say, millions of data centers, billions of data, and you require a robust infrastructure built on world-class partners like Hitachi. VMware Cloud Foundation is an answer. Right? So it gives you a combination of HCI, it gives you a combination of modern applications, and it also gives you a framework where the developer can actually come and host, new and modern applications onto the VMware Cloud Foundation. The second part is you require ubiquitous access to any application. And this while the first part actually talked about those millions of data centers, this part will talk about your billions of devices, right? And how do you basically store information? How do you manage those devices? And also make sure that it is completely secure. Right? That is where the VMware Workspace One story comes into perspective. Right? And we say that it is consumer simple and it is enterprise ready. Basically allowing you to have a unified management across any kind of a device which you can think of, right from a rugged device to a tablet to a laptop to Windows 10 to Mac OS. You can ideally manage any kind of a device which you can think of. Not only that, so the first piece is the unified endpoint management. The second piece about the Workspace One is you can access any kind of an application with identity management, single sign-on, two-factor authentication built into Workspace One. Right? So the second part is the access part, which allows you to access any application, whether it is in your data center or cloud or even the SaaS cloud. Right? So that's what the Workspace One does from the second perspective. So first is the unified endpoint management. Second is ubiquitous access to any kind of application which you can think of. And I talked about the UEM being able to manage iOS, Android, Windows 10, or any kind of rugged devices which are there. Right? Not only that, if you have your desktops and applications, you can ideally access your desktops, which is Windows based. Now what you've also added is a Linux based desktop from any kind of those billions of devices. Virtual applications and virtual desktops can be accessed. So unified endpoint management, access to SaaS based mobile based applications, and then move ahead and you say that you can also access your Windows and Linux based applications or even your Windows desktops through the Workspace One which is there. Right? So it's a single platform which gives you a desktop and your applications. Just-in-time technologies where you can manage any kind of an endpoint device, gives you a great user experience, right? And this is completely integrated into our VCF SDDC stack, right? And this can be hosted anywhere. So whether it is your data center or the cloud, you have the Workspace One along with Horizon, which can be available either from the data center or the cloud itself. What we have added is now we have added the endpoint security also into Workspace One. So you have a single agent on the endpoint, which basically gives you a unified endpoint management, access, single sign-on, identity management, two-factor authentication, access to your Windows and Linux-based applications, VDI, and add to that the endpoint detection and response, which is the EDR, and the security which you normally install through a separate agent on the endpoint. You basically do it through a unified your Workspace One, right? So these is what a Workspace One can do with a single agent. All of this is basically possible on the endpoint, and that covers the billions of devices, right? So bringing it all together, what we can do is, number one, ubiquitous access, always on network, which can be empowered through VMware SD-WAN, and then the robust infrastructure through the VMware Cloud Foundation. And it is secure by design, because we strongly claim that all our technologies are built where security is built in and it is not built on. So if you ask me, what does an enterprise require from a digital perspective to support those millions of data centers and billions of devices to support the modern applications, it is ubiquitous access, always on network, and the robust infrastructure. Right? So that is what VMware stands for. Any device, any cloud, any application available to help your digital journey. So that's it. From my side, we have a question. If you can answer, thanks for that. Okay, thank you. Thank you for the patient hearing. We are here to answer any questions. Please type it in the chat box. I'll hand it over to Sudarshan to tell you, why we believe that partners like Hitachi are strong partners who can help you with the robust infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you, Nilesh. Thank you for that wonderful presentation. So let me start the video. Let me also share my screen. Just give me a minute. So thank you, Nilesh, and thank you, Sunil, for that wonderful presentation. Now, moving forward, what we're going to look at is the resilient, scalable infrastructure that is required to make, that entire ecosystem a reality, which is the hybrid cloud or software-defined data center. Now, if you look at Hitachi Vantara, there's been an evolution in our portfolio. Eventually, or for a long time, customers have known us for the highly scalable, robust, 100% data availability, guaranteed storage systems and storage platforms out there, where we're operating close to about 9 out of 10 banks. All the Fortune, most of the Fortune 500 companies are using Hitachi, products in one way or the other. But it's been quite some time that we evolved from storage. We did provide a full stack of converged solutions. We were early to capture on into the market with the hyperconverged with wonderful partner like VMware. So we have hyperconverged offerings. We find that hyperconverged is not the end state. The end state necessarily is to move into a resilient cloud foundation like architecture, which is nothing but a software defined data center, or a complete hybrid, enabling a hybrid cloud infrastructure right from your on-premise. So in that offering, we have three different offerings, as I would call it: the converged, hyperconverged, and cloud foundation. The focus of today's presentation is more around the hyperconverged and cloud foundation, but I would also like to talk to you through why we feel that best of both the worlds is very important, where customers shouldn't necessarily be boxed into choosing either a hyperconverged or an external storage or a converged ecosystem. How can a vendor like Hitachi make that a reality, where you have a very flexible choice, a fluid choice to choose from, especially from the resilient architecture standpoint? So moving ahead, let me just move ahead. I want to kind of quickly concentrate on what is Hitachi and VMware bringing on the table. And you heard Nilesh talk about most of the VMware portfolio, where they're pretty much the market leaders in virtualization, desktop virtualization, and now the hyperconverged infrastructure, which is a reality through the VMware vSAN. Then moving completely into a software-defined data center, where you're not only looking at infrastructure, but you're also enabling application modernization through container ecosystem getting adopted onto VMware Cloud Foundation, and obviously the intrinsic security that is provided by the SDN or the NSXT as we would know it today. So VMware is bringing that entire reality of a software-defined, data center, whether it is, within the data center or in the edge locations, or what we would call as, or in the public cloud, and therefore it becomes a borderless, data center kind of aspect. So VMware is bringing that portfolio not only on-premise but into public cloud offerings as well, enabling various use cases like your hybrid, private cloud, digital workplace, and essentially all of that. Now, where Hitachi is investing and where Hitachi is working very closely with VMware is to ensure that you have a rock solid, robust, scalable, resilient underlying platform, which is nothing but, let's say, if you choose a converged or a hyperconverged or a rack scale to run the VMware Cloud Foundation, Hitachi is there to provide all of the infrastructure capabilities. Not only that, we still have customers that are operating our robust, enterprise class storage system platform in a 2DC, 3DC architecture. There are various integration points right into the VMware ecosystem, such as now the concept of storage policy-based management has become a reality. Therefore, you're looking at aspects like vWalls, virtual volumes. You're looking at tighter integration into the VMware ecosystem through various, storage providers, through various, if you're looking at telemetrics, especially using vRealize Operation Suite, then you're looking at the infrastructure providing all the contextual information back into VMware. So we are investing our engineering resources and development, one in providing a resilient, scalable platform. At the same time, for our mainstream platforms as well, we are providing those capabilities of integration and providing contextual information back into the VMware software layer. And then you have the object storage. I'll talk about how modernizing unstructured data, especially in a VDI kind of workload scenario, becomes important, and how Hitachi's object storage can add great value, especially in a VDI ecosystem. So we have a very strong integration, and our integration is not just limited to certification of the underlying platforms. There's a joint engineering effort. There's also effort around the manageability and seamless lifecycle management, which I will talk about in my subsequent slides. So we cover all the, we make the reality from an infrastructure standpoint to enable all the VMware software that runs above the infrastructure. Now, the topic of today's presentation, the concentration is more towards the HCI and the hybrid cloud through VCF. So from a Hitachi Hyperconverged, we are at the core running, vSAN, which means that the vSphere vSAN are the same binaries. They're factory integrated and shipped out. We have both the configurations, which is a ready node and a complete integrated HCI appliance. I'll show you what the difference is. We're part of the VMware's global partner appliance program, which means that you could essentially buy the software-defined storage vSAN from us. We would provide both L1, L2 support for this. It'll be factory integrated. The other aspect is we put in a lot of investments around providing a common management interface, which means right from the vCenter, you'll be able to manage the underlying infrastructure. I'll talk more about that. We have a full stack of lifecycle management, which not only extends on HCI nodes, but can extend itself on IP switches, SAN switches. If you do connect SAN storage to the HCI cluster, we can manage that as well. We are also providing, keeping to the times, a flexible consumption model, more like pay-per-use, a leasing model, to ensure that customers have that option, not only a technological change, but the commercial arrangement can also be worked through, moving from a CapEx into a utility model, right? So the point, like I said, was we've signed up with VMware to be part of the global partner appliance. There's a clear distinction between an appliance and a ready node. I'll focus on few of the aspects out here. One of the important aspects is, yes, it's factory integrated, which means that if you buy the networking and if you buy the HCI nodes, everything is rack stacked and shipped out to you. The vSphere, vSAN binaries are preloaded from the factory itself, which means that you're going to be getting a very compliant and ready infrastructure. The skill requirement to set this up is going to be, not that high as compared to a ready node, which means that it's much better off compared to a ready node because everything is pre-integrated at the factory. We have automated the bring up process for you, which we call as day zero automation. I'll talk more about this. So in appliance, there's very less of manual intervention. The whole bring up process of the HCI cluster is completely automated. The time to production is faster with an appliance. Obviously, the patching, upgrade, and the full lifecycle management, which we call day 1, 2, and beyond, is completely seamless from an appliance standpoint. So from a Hitachi standpoint, while we have both the options of an appliance and ready node, we would recommend appliances to our customer because the fact that the effort it takes to stand up and run that configuration of the HCI cluster is far more easier with an appliance configuration. And the support, like I said, it's a single point of support both for VMware software as well as Hitachi hardware stack, which means that, and you have the call home support. It's completely integrated. There's a lot of AI monitoring that's happening on the back end, which we call as the high track software. So essentially, or remote operations. So essentially with that, what simply happens is you have proactive alerts, and easier root cause analysis. So as a result, having the appliance, you're quicker to production, especially for digitally enabled business services to be onboarded faster. And secondly, you have a seamless lifecycle management throughout the lifecycle of the appliance, right? So now, what are the use cases? We've seen an interesting shift. Primarily when HCI started in the marketplace, it was predominantly said that, hey, this is going to be limited more to tier 2, tier 3 workloads. VDI is a good space for HCI, but not anymore. We see that a lot of mission critical applications are getting onboarded onto hyperconverged infrastructure. You see that in-memory databases such as SAP HANA. SAP applications was a sweet spot for HCI, but now we see even SAP HANA being onboarded onto hyperconverged infrastructure. And especially with VMware now supporting PMEM, there is interesting applications of the persistent memory that is possible with SAP HANA, especially if you're looking at the smaller sizes, less than 6 terabyte, and you're looking at consolidation, that can be done on hyperconverged. We see customers opt out for SQL and Oracle as well, onto the hyperconverged infrastructure, and especially for virtualization, hybrid cloud, HCI becomes a sweet spot. So the point is this, that we are seeing a lot of customers move away or have already moved into production tier 1 applications, mission critical applications that are very, very performant oriented, low latency oriented. No more distinction that is required between, let's say, HCI versus a traditional architecture, because HCI today, especially with our joint collaboration with Intel and VMware, with Intel Optane or storage class memory as the primary cache tier and NVMe as the backend capacity tier, we can address really low latency, high performance, mission critical databases on hyperconverged infrastructure. And we've seen that that most of the clusters that the customers are implementing today are completely on all-flash configurations. To those customers and prospective customers, I would start saying that please start evaluating SCM with NVMe, because you're going to be having an infrastructure that is blazingly fast and low latency from a requirement, which therefore can address your tier 1 applications as well. Now, what is the unique value proposition from Hitachi in a single slide, right? The point is this, that we have automated the complete provisioning of the cluster using a rules-based validation. So we will discover the nodes, we will install your vSphere, we'll configure the vSAN, we will join this to the vCenter cluster and make it ready to use. As a result, we are 85% faster compared to traditional deployment. But the question really is, it's not the deployment time that's great out there, but the fact that you're using a rules-based validation, so there's very little room for configuration creep because of the fact that everything is standardized, and therefore you're getting the best way to implement a HCI cluster, using our deployment manager. That is the day zero automation that we've invested in. Post that, we integrate right into the vCenter. You can have a full view or single pane of glass of the HCI infrastructure. If you buy the networking switches from us, we provide you Cisco and Arista as a choice. We can configure and maintain those networking switches as well. We provide a lot of contextual information right into the vRealize operations. We provide a lot of information into log insight from the infrastructure. So these are the familiar softwares that you would come to use as a virtual administrator. This I've already said is a certified appliance, turnkey. We have the best of the options, a complete end-to-end stack, both block, file, and object. And lastly, a complete stack we have, which is the rack scale, which I'll talk about subsequently, which is the VMware Cloud Foundation. We can extend this to any of the public cloud offerings that VMware is on. We also support FC storage as a principal storage. Now I'll talk about this flexible storage option, especially our customers seem to love that option that exists between VMware and Hitachi on that. Very quickly, this is what I spoke about. So this is our deployment manager, which we call the UCP Advisor deployment manager. When we ship out the HCI cluster, factory integrated, and for further configuration, that is network and security, vCenter, bringing the entire cluster ready to use, we can typically deploy a large cluster within 8 hours using this deployment manager, and it uses a completely automated fashion to bring up the cluster, where then business can start realizing the infrastructure that they purchased for. So the deployment is consistent, it's compliant, and is super quick using the deployment manager. Once we do that, this is the UCP Advisor again, a centralized access, provide an automated upgrade for software and hardware, phone home support. We not only provide a single pane of glass for the HCI nodes, but we can also do for the IP switches, FC switches, and any Hitachi storage connected to this HCI ecosystem. Now, again, I would just want to stress that, you might, based upon your workload, you might need different kinds of HCI cluster. We have it all covered, right from hybrid. I would say hybrid is more towards those high density, where you have tier 2, tier 3 workloads like CCTV, etc., which demands a lot of capacity but low IOPS requirement, and latency is not too much of a concern. Then hybrid pretty much gets used. Your remote offices, edge locations can use hybrid. But when you start moving towards, like I said, the tier 0, tier 1 applications, we surely are going to be looking at storage class memory and all NVMe based solution. It's almost cost parity to move from an SSD to an all NVMe based solution. Therefore, we were the first ones in the market to release an SCM with an NVMe as a capacity tier. IDC did carry a paper calling the Hitachi bespoke solution with this, and we have a lot of customers right now in different regions in APAC onboarded on this, and we have good testimonials coming in from them saying that yes, the SCM with all NVMe is making a difference. They're able to start addressing the tier 0 applications on the HCI cluster. And obviously we have GPU nodes, especially VDI, AI, ML workloads, especially if you're looking at right from the T4 seems to be a popular card right now. But then if you're moving up the stack, you're looking at AI and ML and deep learning kind of scenarios. Then you're looking at the V100 card with 16 or 32 GB of memory in the NVIDIA graphics card, right? At the same time, for general purpose, you have the all-flash offerings as well. So we have a range of offerings from large capacity to blazingly fast. You move from dollar per gigabyte to dollar per IO. We have you covered in all those scenarios. Now, this is very interesting. This is our customers coming back and telling us that, hey, this is a great thing that I'm hearing. If you talk to most of the other hyperconverged vendors out in the market, you're going to be boxed. It's pretty much, it's either a all HCI based looking glass. What I mean by that is all workloads are addressed only through HCI. But we have a lot of customers coming and telling us that, look, I love the HCI. It simplifies my administration. It's pay as you grow model. But I still have workloads where I might need an external storage. I have workloads where I have monster capacities requirement, and I necessarily don't want to just add another HCI node for storage capacity. I would want the capability to have my external SAN storage, especially Hitachi customers, attach into the hyperconverged, and I decide, when do I choose an external, when do I choose a software-defined base storage. That capability exists today only with VMware in a very seamless fashion. Okay, to give you best of both the worlds, that is both hyperconverged plus a combination of external SAN. What Hitachi has done is this: we have gone one step ahead, and what we're telling our customers is we will automate the delivery of VMFS or your VMDK, or if you want vWalls, into the cluster, which simply means as a VM, you can either go and choose a vSAN based storage that is getting delivered out of our hyperconverged nodes, or you could choose the VM to use the compute resources from the the hyperconverged cluster, but the storage is getting used from the external storage either as VMFS or vWalls. Now, what is the beauty? The beauty is all of this can be managed using the storage policy based management SPBM framework that VMware has. What Hitachi has done is Hitachi has automated that complete delivery process of storage resources. So you don't have to go anywhere away from vCenter. All of this, provisioning the data store, expanding, deleting, managing the data stores, everything can be done within vCenter itself by going into the UCP Advisor plugin. So now we have the capability to support both hyperconverged and external SAN for our customers, especially for our customers. We all know that if you want to get into HCI, VMware vSAN is the quickest way to get. It's the most least risk, because your vSphere and vSAN binaries are the same. Now for existing Hitachi customers, it becomes even more better because now you can reuse and reutilize your existing SAN infrastructure. But we have not only Hitachi customers, we have a lot of customers that have bought hyperconverged infrastructure and external storage together. And that has become more prominent as we start moving into VMware Cloud Foundation, which I'll bring up in the subsequent slides. Now, the point that I want to make here is that, we are all going through a journey. Our customers are going through a journey. But if you see, most of them today are pretty much here, right? I mean, they have the vSphere, they have the vCenter, and etc. But that's necessarily not what is a private cloud, right? I mean, you have the NIST definition of what a private cloud is, or what a cloud is. I mean, basically you need to have resource pooling, you need to have chargeback, you need to have a self-service portal, you need to have broad network access. All of this is essentially what defines a private cloud. And that's why, the VMware Cloud Foundation is a great story to have happened to the customers, because now you have a single stack which provides you that capability of software-defined storage, software-defined networking, your software-defined compute, and then then you have the self-service portal or cloud management platform that is coming in, plus the chargeback and all of the associated elements, the telemetrics, the operational analytics, everything coming in from the vRealize suite. So what's happening is you're moving all the physical elements into the virtual element, into the virtual data plane. You can now apply compliance rules, various aspects to it. Therefore, the entire infrastructure, physical infrastructure, which was static, now becomes dynamic, fluid pool of resources that you could control, and therefore digitally enabled business services are able to be adopted or onboarded much faster. And then you span this across different clouds, because based upon various scenarios, cost economics, performance, because of various other services that are natively available in these cloud providers, and VMware gives you the option through, let's say your VMware cloud on AWS or your Google or your Azure or any of the VCPP partners to be able to make that a reality, where now you're not stuck with just, one cloud, but you're making that true hybrid cloud or multi-cloud a reality. And this is what I'm talking is more for the VMs, but what's even more stronger and what's even more beautiful is the fact that now you have the capability to run VMs and containers alongside each other. Containers obviously is used for modernizing your application, so you don't have to look anywhere. The VCF stack with the 4.1 provides you that capability to run both VMs and containers side by side. But having said that, what are the approaches for the software-defined data center? Very quickly, you can do it yourself, but you're going to have long lead time to production. You're going to be doing validation and configuration checks by yourself. You're going to be updating the elements individually. More important is the SDDC manager that comes in the previous VCF offering that allows you that the same way the UCP Advisor that Hitachi uses for centralized management of hardware, SDDC manager is used for the centralized lifecycle management of the entire virtual elements that VMware provides. The other one is you can use VMware validated design. This is good, but you will be spending a lot on these services. You'll have to go through 500-page documentation. An easier approach is to use the VMware Cloud Foundation, which is completely automated. The bring up process is also automated, and you have Hitachi that is providing you a fully integrated system to give you that VMware Cloud Foundation. SDDC Manager is used for managing the centralized lifecycle management of the virtual data plane, like your vSAN, vSphere, your NSX, your vRealize components, and etc. Also to create that workload domains where based upon the organizational unit or workload, you can have multi-tenancy there. In the same way we integrate into vCenter, we provide that centralized management of the hardware, geographically distributed, centralized, it does not matter. UCP Advisor can manage all of that. What's more interesting, what's more important, which I'll talk about my next slide, which I already spoke in detail, is that now you can use a principal FC storage or FC storage as a principal storage, and you can essentially have both VMFS and vWall, and we can provide the CSI driver support for providing persistent storage to your container ecosystem. It can be used as a supplemental storage as well. So this slide is a very powerful slide for our customers and customers that necessarily do not want to be boxed into just choosing HCI, because we've had now quite a huge amount of time that we've existed with HCI, and we know from all our customers that we talk to, eventually they like to have this flexibility and dynamically be able to choose. And therefore, just choosing HCI as a software defined storage as the only repository to maintain your storage is not the best of the options. And I would be highly thankful to VMware to enable this, and they've made that a reality with the VMware Cloud Foundation, where your principal storage for the management is software defined storage, which means that you only have vSAN as an option. But when you start looking at workloads where you want to run VDI or general purpose or for any other workloads, you can choose either a vSAN, a vWall, NFS, or FC, right? And you have that option as a customer that all of this can be your principal storage. Now, if you choose one of these principal storage, let's say I choose vSAN, but I want to supplement, I want to add capacity, I could choose vWalls or FC and add capacity into that cluster. So you have the option of choosing either a principal storage from these options, or having choose one, you can later supplement it with additional types of storage. So you have the maximum flexibility that is available through the VMware Cloud Foundation. With this, I'll bring up the poll question, take a pause for about 15 seconds, and then I'll move on to the next slide. Yeah, you can bring up the poll question. Yeah. Okay, I'm moving on to the next slide. Very quickly, because Nilesh spoke about VDI, I want to quickly touch upon this. The fact is this, that VDI, you can do it on HCI converged infrastructure. HCI seems to be the preferred choice, but we are the first vendors, along with Intel and with VMware, to have the Intel Select certified, which simply means that, like I said, you can use the Intel Optane and essentially the NVMe as a capacity tier, and it's completely certified to run the horizon view environment, which simply means that what we've realized running about 10,000 to 15,000 VDI for one customer is that this is the most performant hungry workload in the data center. And it is also very end user related, which means that you don't want an angry VDI user who's waiting for 2 minutes for his desktop to load up, start, or for his, basically they would want, especially with the current scenario, you want a seamless experience. For that, the underlying hardware needs to be right. And for that, the Intel Optane with the NVMe gives a very good value proposition for the VDI workload. But it's just not the HCI that Hitachi is into. If you look at the VDI, I have done numerous sizings. 20 to 30% is typically what is the VDI capacity, but rest of them, which is your user store, your user persona, all of that is unstructured data. And unstructured data is typically close to about 60 to 70% of the capacity requirement. Now, the whole point is, why do we want to put that into a network attached storage? Because the whole world right now is shifting, especially with Hitachi leading that in the forefront, is shifting the unstructured data to be modernized with a very strong object platform. With the object storage, which is our Hitachi content platform, or with a content repository, what you get when you store the user data on the object storage is the fact that you get a complete ransomware protection. You get a self-service access where the users can selectively restore any versions of the file because it is completely worm-enabled device. The idea is that through this, you will be able to have on-premise enterprise file sync and share like the OneDrive and Dropbox and etc. But this is through the Hitachi content platform. You can enable enterprise file sync and share for your users. The IT team retains full visibility. When I mean that, you're not looking at the data of the users, you're looking at the metadata. That is more important. Metadata is a very important aspect, is the information about the data. So when you have metadata that is accessible, that is indexed, that is searchable, and can be appended, you have a very strong control over the data that is getting stored. At the same time, you can do all kinds of analytics, like you can classify the file, the age of the file, categorize it, and etc. Once the data is on the object storage, it's completely backup-less protection, which means that you do not need to back it up because it is a RAIN-enabled device. It's self-healing. You can geographically distribute the unstructured data within the data center. It is again protected. So therefore, you can save huge amounts of licensing costs from backup infrastructure, backup software, and backup licenses for the unstructured data. To bring it all into slide, we're using a hyperconverged to enable the horizon view. The unstructured data can be serviced using the, basically an enterprise file sync and share. Users can store their files, share their files across their devices, mobile phones. They bring BYOD, tablets. All of that can be enabled. It's securely stored on premise. You do not need to back it up. It's ransomware protected, and the organization has a full visibility of the data. And we have a lot of customers that have implemented the solution. It makes a lot of sense, especially essentially for enabling digital workplace. What we did is we did a profiling exercise with VMware. I'm going to quickly go through this. We classified, because the new norm is the current work style is that everyone is going to be working remotely, and this is going to become a reality, at least for a large majority of the organizations. The recent I read about last week, and all of us would know that government now has allowed all IT organizations to operate and enable work from home as a permanent working style. And therefore we see that there is going to be a spurt of deployment of VDI. What's very important is profiling those users. What we've done is we've classified task, developer, and power user based upon these requirements. So you have 2 vCPU, 4 GB RAM, you have the instant clones that are there, and your user data is 25 GB. When it goes to power, it's 50 GB. Now, based upon this classification, as a quick conversation starter, we put across a bundle that includes the hardware, which is again on Intel Optane with NVMe, SCM, the quickest performing infrastructure with top of the rack switches, with the VMware licenses that are there, and also the enterprise file sync and share with 36 months of maintenance. And obviously we can discuss with regards to the deployment and the knowledge transfer. Now, based upon these 4 nodes and this configuration, you can either have 500 users, you could have 250 or 150. We did this for the large bundle as well. So either you could onboard 1,000, 500 or 350. And these are all node balanced nodes, which means that you can incrementally scale by addition of 1 node, you scale those many number of users. So you can scale this to, almost about 10,000, 15,000 based upon that. Obviously, we'll get into an architecture discussion, discuss about business continuity planning, discuss about how is this deployment going to happen. But for smaller set of users, you could straight away start with this bundle. You could talk to any of our sales or pre-sales counterparts, and they'll be able to help you get this bundle across and have a discussion with you. Yeah. Now I'll bring up the last poll question. With that, my presentation finishes, and I'm going to hand this back to Sunil. And thanks again to Nilesh and Sunil for taking part. Yeah. Sunil, over to you, Sunil.
Yeah. So thank you, Nilesh and Sudarshan. Those were very engrossing and enlightening presentations. So I'm sure we can now take it forward. So we would request the audience to send in your questions. You can ask your questions by typing in the Q&A button below the screen. And in the meanwhile, we will have a fireside chat with Nilesh and Sudarshan. And we had like very interesting presentations. So we will take the ideas forward in that. So as we will begin the discussion, and I request the audience to please keep sending your questions, and I'll keep reading as and when they come. So I think it would be right to first discuss the poll questions. So yeah. Can you just give us the poll questions? Then we can start discussing that. 1 minute. Yeah. So I think this was with Nilesh. So Nilesh, the question asked was, what is the most important aspect of your IT transformation in your organization? So I think though applications modernization led infrastructure transformations at 42%, but all of the above is 47%. So most people want to keep their bases covered. So can you please, talk on these two things? Nilesh, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry about this. So what has happened is, I have been engaged with a lot of organizations across the country and trying to work with them and understand what digital journey means for them. And what I learned from each one of them is that when they talk digital, it's actually about the applications. Right? The entire digital transformation is led by applications. And the modern application way, the way the applications are designed, the applications are coded, the applications are running. That's the way to build applications today, right? Which helps you with core challenges like business agility, cost effectiveness, porting it on any kind of a cloud and so on. So that is what we learned, and obviously we are the technology providers, and that is where we provide feedback to our internal teams, and that is where we came out with a platform, okay, which says that can we create a software-defined platform which allows you to run and manage, and not only run and manage, but build any kind of application, okay, which you are thinking of to support your digital transformation. Right? So that's true. You talked about the billions of devices, the IoT applications, the AI applications, the business intelligence applications, the mobile applications which organizations are creating to go digital. Everything is based on the modern applications, and that is where the robust platform comes into picture, which Sudarshan talked about, which gives you the scale, which gives you the security and agility to work on it. Right? And that is what the audience said, that the lead is to have a modern infrastructure which is led by app modernization and security which is built in, right? Because security is very, very important, because your information lies on that infrastructure. That is where you would want your security to be built in, integrated, intrinsic, rather than trying to just add on. So I completely agree with the audience, whatever they said. And one promise which I can do is, like, Hitachi and VMware together do have the right platform to basically support the entire journey of modern applications on a very, very robust, agile, secure, scalable infrastructure on any kind of a cloud, supporting any kind of data which you can actually think of.
Okay, thank you. So I guess virtualization and software defined is the way forward. So I think already the second question has come. Okay. The second question is, do you believe that hybrid multi-cloud is the way forward in your digital transformation journey? So I guess 95% say yes. So I mean, this is like very conclusive. So maybe you can speak about that.
Yes, so as I mentioned in my presentation, what I also observed is that while modern applications is leading the way, you are not doing away with your legacy applications, right? So you still have your data centers which you have built, you have your monolithic applications which you are using on a day-to-day basis. Plus, your digital journey is now supported with those modern applications. And we have seen that most of the modern applications are ported in a cloud natively, right? That means they are built for the cloud. And that is where the need comes, okay, to have a hybrid or a multi-cloud kind of a scenario. And that is where the need comes, which can give you a consistent infrastructure across any kind of a cloud which you can think of. And not only consistent infrastructure, but consistent operations with built-in security, right? So every organization today, wherever we go, they definitely say that they are using some or the other portion of the cloud, right? And it is not siloed, right? That is the most important part. When you think of cloud, organizations are not thinking of cloud from a siloed perspective. It is always interconnected to your legacy applications, your databases, your data which is lying in your data centers. That has to work in conjunction. That has to work in a synergetic manner, okay, to give a complete user experience as far as that organization is concerned, right? But it is easier said than done. It is not simple, because you are envisioning multiple information layers, tons of data, and trying to integrate and secure that and then represent it to the user, right? So it is not that easy. And that is what we try to do, where we say that, again, provide a consistent infrastructure and operations across any kind of a cloud which you can think of, with unified management and operations. So that's what we believe strongly, and the Cloud Foundation, as I said, is the answer, along with what Sudarshan presented, with robust infrastructure on Hitachi platforms. So yes, I think the audience said it, and obviously when you think of it, I think that VMware and Hitachi are the right partners basically to help you out to meet that expectation of the multi-cloud and the hybrid.
Yeah, right.
And I think what's important, just to add a few things to what Nilesh and you're saying, is the fact that, it's very interesting to see how the questions has transformed itself over the years, right? Previously, it used to be, are you considering public cloud? Those were the time. But now everyone realizes that the hybrid or multi-cloud is pretty much a reality. So the point is, how do you enable that? And also the fact that, CNCF, Cloud Native Foundation, carried out the survey. And what we see is that most of the customers have stopped toying with the whole DevOps and containers as let's say in test and development, and a lot of these, almost about 60% of customers surveyed, or almost 70%, large majority, have started really realizing the benefits, have started adopting this in production environments. So which simply means that it's no more a hobby project in a developer's environment, but it's something that is very, very important for the business. It's moved into production, which means that you need to have that commercial grade enterprise class support, and therefore enabling, and also the transition from moving from a virtual to a container world should not be cumbersome, should not be complex. And in that way, like what Nilesh is saying, the VCF is pretty much solved that, especially with the Tanzu Kubernetes grid. Then you move it to Tanzu Mission Critical Services, all of those. But then you have a robust underlying platform. Aspects like using the flexible choice of storage also becomes important.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Seamless and simple. I guess customers must be looking for a seamless and simple way forward.
That's true.
I'll add one more word: cost effective.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, that is the main thing. So I think we can take the next poll question then. We can discuss the next poll question. So the question was, in setting up your private cloud, hybrid cloud for the underlying storage, which are the deployment options you would prefer? So again, this is like slightly mixed. 46% is flexible storage options, which include all SDS, FC, SAN, NS, and managed centrally. 31% is software-defined storage through HCI, and 23% is storage on FC stand storage. So this is like still more spread out. So maybe if you can shed light on that.
Yeah. I would say it's interesting because majority there have already realized that they would like to have that flexibility as an option and not really be boxed into choosing just one format of storage. And that is very interesting because in that sense, VMware is truly operating, I would say, as a trusted partner to the customers, and vendors like Hitachi are adding value to that framework and ecosystem, because you're not boxed into choosing just a software defined storage. Because one of the important aspects that you need to realize is that if your compute and storage are typically on a non-linear growth, that is over a period of time, then you would be better off having that flexible storage options for various reasons. If you're using a lot of these clustering services, though now it's improved, but especially raw device mappings, RDM volumes, and etc., you still have certain dependency on external storage. And if you have VMs that require monster capacities, you still are dependent to an extent on external storage. So giving that option, but bringing everything under the umbrella of these, a common framework for managing those external and internal entities, and providing you that seamless option is the best way moving forward. So in that regards, I think VMware and Hitachi enable that truly for our customers. And the testimonial that is with the VCF 4.1, you don't even have to go to the vendor console to do that. Right from the VCF console deployment option of storage, you can choose vSAN, or you could choose a VMFS or a vWall, kind of storage options out there. Yeah. So I think that result is nice. But I would say customers you don't need to be boxed in. So you have a choice with VMware and Hitachi. Yeah.
So Nilesh, you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, correct. So what you said, right? There is no need to be boxing. basically, and there will be the crux lies that you will have different kind of workload, right? Again, going back to what I said, application led, and every application will have its own kind of storage requirements, right? And that is where you need a flexible infrastructure with the modern software story, which is the storage policy management, right? So that is how it's going to be. You will have a combination of workloads running on HCI and then your traditional FC storage. But what you require is that those workloads need to be managed, okay, like a software defined, right? And that is where the crux lies, that I should be able to manage everything through a single policy and bring it as close as possible to my workload, right? And that is where the Hitachi story comes, and where you can have any kind of storage.
So, right, I think there's one more question left, poll question left. So, if you can be shown that, yeah. So, the last question was, in the current scenario, have you adopted or are you planning to adopt VDI solutions? So, here again, it's slightly mixed. Most is we are ramping up our environment to address more number of users. And then we are already running VDI. We plan to implement VDI in the next 3 to 6 months, and we do not have any plans to VDI. So that means only 15% says they don't plan for VDI, and 85% say they either have or in the process or are looking at. So 85% is also quite an interesting number. Maybe you can speak.
So I think 50%, if you look at that, that's close to about 50% that are ramping up and implementing VDI based solution. Right. So I think that's an interesting thing. And, customers are going to go through different evaluation cycles, especially for those evaluating. The idea is that from my perspective, how do you shorten that cycle is to look at a certified, architectures, to look at a, architecture that is already built up to quickly ramp up and get people on board, users on board, and especially address the unstructured data. And obviously with VMware, now they have a whole scenario out there, not only of horizon view, but you have the Workspace One, you have Carbon Black. So you have various technology that is going to kind of provide the security compliance, that entire scalability aspect to address enabling digital workplace. And this is becoming interesting because we have large ITS organizations that are already telling us that 70 to 75% of their workforce is going to operate remotely. And I've been speaking to customers. Initially, they were saying that VPN would address it, but over a period of time, they've understood that VPN is not a solution to enable a robust remote workplace kind of solution. So, please talk to us, Hitachi and VMware. If you're ramping up or if you're looking at, VDI as a new initiative. And we would also like to know from the 15% as to why do they think that a remote workplace is not something that they would be looking out for. It would be interesting. Yeah. Over to Nilesh for any further comments.
Yeah, so because, VDI was always considered as one of solution, right? Maybe a year back, but the pandemic has changed everything. And with the new normal, right? There is a new term which has come into picture, which is known as SASE. Right, which is secure access, secure edge, right? So where you not only talk about remotely accessing information, it's about how do you secure it, how do you make it more foolproof as far as the end user is concerned, and address information issues right from the data center to the cloud to the device, right? So with new technologies, I would say, which is a combination of technology, which is secure access, secure edge. VDI is also becoming more prominent because VDI will be one of the components of your secure access, secure edge. Right? There are organizations who are saying that we want 30% of our workforce permanently working from a remote location or a home. Right? So with these kind of scenarios emerging, where organizations are looking at new ways of working, right? VDI aspect becomes very, very important. And as you rightly said, with unified endpoint management, secure access, single sign-on, identity management, software-defined WAN, endpoint detection response, and VDI, what VMware is trying to do is provide a complete experience from the SASE perspective, which is secure access and secure edge. Right? And that is where VMware, as a technology company, becomes more prominent, important to help the initiative where organizations are looking to work from anywhere. and as I said, VDI is just one aspect.
Okay. So actually we are okay, sorry, Sudarshan, you were saying something?
No, nothing else. I just said sure. Thanks, Nilesh. Yeah. Go ahead.
So actually we are running out of time, but I think we can take a couple of audience questions. So one is nowadays we are moving to public cloud environment rapidly. How to ensure the compliance and security of our data? Yeah, I mean, data compliance and data security both are huge issues. So maybe if you can speak a bit on that.
You want to go first, Nilesh, on that?
Yeah, so one is it's a very wide aspect, right? When you say data compliance and security, it's not just one single thing which actually says that this data is compliant and secure, right? So ideally, there are a number of things, and it starts from the organization, how they want to put that, from the technology vendors who provide that perspective, right? And there is a zero trust security framework which every technology vendor tries to basically follow. So if you look at VMware and Hitachi, it would start with the most basic thing which you can do is encryption, okay, which covers your data at rest and data in motion both, right? Second is, so while you move, your workloads, okay, from your private cloud to the public cloud or any cloud, it has to be made sure that it is encrypted to the safest possible standards which are defined all across the world. So encryption is number one, okay, which has to be there in data at rest and data in motion as well. The second aspect is in terms of where that data lies, right? That is also very, very important. And if you're talking about the centers of data, that is the endpoints, then you talk about DLP and the other prevention measures which you do from the endpoint perspective. The third is your network, right, which is very, very important. And whether it is your east-west traffic or your north-south traffic, you want to determine how your data is actually flowing from one end to another, and then again follow practices like encryption standards and protection and so on, right? So to answer, one, we need to devise the strategy and then look at technologies which are secure by design. So while you move, even the data is not compromised. And then obviously there is a perimeter which is basically there, whether it is in your data center or the cloud, which actually does a lot of data protection, right? And that is your firewall, your IDS, IPS, and other tools which prevents unauthorized access to that data. Right? If anything else you'd like to add.
Yeah, so I think I would concur with all of what Nilesh said, and with Hitachi, especially we have this group called the Hitachi Digital Solutions Group, and I think about a year and a half back, we made an acquisition called ReanCloud. Now, ReanCloud is into helping customers basically accelerate their transformation into public cloud space. With that, they have this whole concept of this whole DevOps style of operating, which is essentially looking at continuous integration, continuous testing, looking at where you might have vulnerabilities, loopholes, addressing those, and that happens on a continuous basis. So yes, you could leverage our ReanCloud services to help you onboard quickly on a public cloud. At the same time, address all of the security concerns that are there and make sure that you're compliant to standards. But having said that, the easiest way to move into the public cloud offering is through the whole VMware cloud on AWS, because the whole is you're going to get that consistent experience, consistent deployment, and the intrinsic security, like what Nilesh said, the zero trust network, the capability to operate the same way that you were doing on-premise with all your security hardening standards and everything, with the encryption thrown in there. So you have multiple options. So you could use VMware Cloud on AWS and then natively start consuming AWS services, or it could be any of the other public clouds as well. So for customers that are essentially who've been operating VMware for quite some time, I think that's the quickest, safest, and easiest path to get onto public cloud offerings here.
Okay, so I think I'll just take one last question, maybe something that could be useful for the audience. Hitachi Vantara announced Hitachi Vantara vSAN is now part of VMware Global Partner Appliance. Now, what does this mean to the market?
That's an interesting question. So The fact is that we've been working with VMware since the inception of the Hyperconverged and essentially onboarding vSAN as the primary, and from a software-defined storage standpoint, that's the only option that we have. Over the recent, I think this was about 6 to 8 months back, there was this program under the Global Partner Appliance, and if you know the slide that I showed you, the difference between the ready node and the appliance, we're part of the program, which simply means that now you can buy the vSAN licenses as OEM licenses, node lock licenses from us, which means that the L1, L2 support comes from us. It's factory integrated, factory shipped out. You have the UCP Advisor for centrally managing the entire stuff. You have the deployment manager to deploy the hyperconverged infrastructure. So what it simply means is, while VMware vSAN is the quickest path to get to the HCI in the most minimal risk fashion, at the same time, you have a vendor that's providing you that single stop support, and especially working with VMware and classifying the entire infrastructure as a pre-integrated SKU, which is an appliance SKU. Therefore, it makes onboarding and the life cycle of the appliance very easy for the customers. Yeah.
Nilesh, you want to add to that?
No, I think that's correct. So it's a global partner program, and obviously, when you buy the appliance, you get best of both the worlds, right? And that is what we're talking about. Software-defined everything with a robust infrastructure, right? That's the promise, which is.
Yeah. So I just want to leave it out there for those of you on the call who would want to try it out in terms of look at the demo section, be it VDI or HCI or VMware Cloud Foundation. You can contact either us or VMware. We have a COE Center of Excellence. We do a lot of demo for our customers. Very situation-oriented demos are done, and then we can work with the VMware teams as well if you need a combined demo along with VMware and Hitachi together. Yeah.
Okay, so I'd like to thank Nilesh and Sudarshan. That was a very informative discussion, and I think there's a lot to ponder over from both the tech and business point of view. So on behalf of Dataquest, Hitachi, Vantara, and VMware, I would like to thank all of our participants today for joining us on this webinar. We hope you found it useful and important. Don't forget to fill in the feedback form on your way out. Have a great evening, everyone. Bye.